Capitalizing on ice time in today's NHL could mean fantasy gold. So we're breaking down some of the Minutemen making the most of their ice time on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
More players, more angles, and more news to be broken down on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, your daily 30-minute source for all things fantasy hockey. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down and continuing to make us your first listen every single day. We see you, appreciate you, and we wouldn't be doing the podcast without y'all. Mr. Rodin, fantasy hockey draft season is anticipatingly drawing near, and we are fired up and ready to go for the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, taking a look at the top players that we like maximizing on ice time, Minutemen, if you will. Around 15 minutes of ice time, a whole bunch of forwards that are bringing value steal in very limited roles who could, with some more minutes, produce even more fantasy value. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com. Win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 hits. Right over to you, my co-host, my friend, my brother, Mr. Rodin. Who are you looking at? These are some juicy players that could really round out and augment a really good fantasy roster.
Yeah, the one thing to keep in mind with these players that we're going to discuss on today's episodes is that most of them are going to be really valuable in deeper formats. So when you get into a 14, 16 team league and you're looking in those later rounds 18, 19, 20, potentially, these players will really come in handy. I think even in a 12-team league, you can get these guys in the last couple of rounds, potentially, depending on again, the format and play style of your league. So keep that in mind with these players that we're suggesting. For me, really good streaming options on a waiver wire. When we do our waiver wire Monday episodes, you can pick them up on a week-to-week basis, but I still think there's a lot of value with these guys in deeper formats. And I want to start off with Taylor Hall of the Carolina Hurricanes, a guy that has had one of the most crazy, windy, adventurous journeys in the National Hockey League, has been super healthy, a superstar in the league, has been at the bottom of the barrel, has hit rock bottom at certain times. He's been on a lot of teams now over the last 5 to 7 years of his career, but I still believe that when he is healthy, which he has struggled with the last 10, 15 years of his career, when he is healthy, he brings some value. And with his position now with the Carolina Hurricanes, you could see an uptick in time on ice. For the last 5 seasons, he's been somewhere around 15 to 16 minutes, but I think you can see even more opportunity in that top 6 forward group where he is projected to play with guys we like. Your boy Seth Jarvis on the second line, who's centering him, as well as an up-and-comer, a breakout candidate in Jackson Blake. So with him getting some top six opportunity in Carolina's team, he doesn't have to have that big load and pressure on his shoulders like he did, on a line with Connor Bedard in Chicago, which was a very bad situation for him at this point in his career. I mean, that is just, you don't want to be a part of a rebuild. So when I look at all those different aspects for Taylor Hall, like I said, a bounce back projection, I think he can go somewhere potentially of up to 50 points this season and still contribute in the other peripheral categories. I think 170 shots is very possible for this player as well. Blocks and hits are not so much his game, but anything obviously adds a bonus into his value. And again, like I said, the reduced pressure, he's not the focal point alongside Connor Bedard in Chicago. And as well as, them bringing in Nikolai Ehlers, it just opens a lot of doors for what Taylor Hall and the amount of talent he has surrounding him now in the Hurricanes locker room.
First and foremost, thank you for teeing up this angle so properly in terms of how GMs out there should be looking at these players that we're speaking about today. Because I do think even at the time on ice that they're getting in Steele, all of the guys I'm talking about today, 16 minutes of ice time or less, even under that. So thank you for teeing that up properly. And let's be real about this Carolina Hurricanes team. This is the deepest team that they've had in a long time, especially up front. So what is Rob Brindamore going to be able to do with what I think we could both agree has been, maybe not last season because they got into the top 10 in scoring, but we could always say the lack of scoring punch might be the teeth that this team lacks. And now it's looking pretty balanced to me. Can the Jackson Blakes, can the Logan Stankovens of the world take that step? Because if they do steal, this team might be very dangerous. And then you're looking at Taylor Hall's value, even more attractive angles. So love this one. Morgan Frost is a player that I think you and I, maybe from my angle, I have maybe expected too much of this player because it's the classic situation of I like what he brings to the table and impacting the game every single night, but his fantasy numbers then fall short. He puts up interesting numbers, Steele. Last year, 60 block shots, almost 70 hits. Then he puts up 41 points, 135 shots. But what I look at for this upcoming season with the Calgary Flames is much like what we just said for the best options we've seen in a while for Carolina. I like what Morgan Frost is going to bring to the table next year. He's going to probably be centering that top power play unit in Calgary. You and I have also said with Dustin Wolf in the cage, don't overlook what this Calgary Flames team can do. So when I look at Morgan Frost and the minutes, and that's the main angle of today, last year, 15 minutes and 45 seconds of ice time per night, Steele, I understand that 37 to 45 points doesn't jump off the page. If he sticks as the top power play center in Calgary and he continues to develop as a 25, 26-year-old center in the game, I see this player very, very much as a sexy stream, or if he pops off right away, you might be adding him and keeping him in Calgary because this team, I'm telling you, is going to be competing for a playoff spot. So I'm high on Morgan Frost personally. I see a lot of value here. Could it not pan out? For sure. But I think it will. He's a Minuteman that I got my eye on.
Yeah, I mean, this Calgary team is very interesting. And again, like I spoke about on Monday's episode of the mock draft, it's been kind of weird to see how far Nazem Kadri and some of these other Calgary players have dropped in the draft. But a guy like Morgan Frost is a really good option when it comes into deeper formats. Like I said, 14 to 16 teams, and you're still trying to find some value in that center position. A guy who has a lot of upside, especially in a new scene with the Calgary Flames instead of the Philadelphia Flyers. We still have a lot more players to talk about. I know we both have Kiefer Sherwood as an option down the road. I want to talk about Jamie Benn and this Dallas Stars team after the break.
Yes,
we got lots of players who are getting under 60 minutes of average ice time that bring a lot of value.
And some of these players we've talked about with different angles already, Steele. I've got a player on the Detroit Red Wings I'll talk about right around the break. Don't miss our next episode on Friday. We'll have a whole bunch of sleepers that you want to take a look at and more mock drafts on the way. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401k, properties, or investments, and you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money, the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch Money is for you. Monarch Money does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts together in minutes. See clear data visuals and smart categorization of your spending. Have control of your money with Monarch Money. Don't let financial opportunity pass you by or slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year. At monarchmoney.com using code LOCKEDONNHL.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip, Livingstone, and Steele Rodin. And like I said, I want to talk about Jamie Benn next because I think this is a guy who still brings a ton of value to the Dallas Stars team, not just on the ice, but with his leadership presence and veteran experience for some of these young guys who are playing in the bottom six and who Jamie Benn will most likely be playing with. Yes. One of the good things about Jamie Benn, fantasy hockey-wise, is he has the dual eligibility. He can be put in that center or left wing position. And like I said, he's just a solid veteran production player for this Stars team. He posted 49 points last year in 80 games. He's been very durable over the last 4 seasons. He's only missed 2 games, which came last year. And perennially throughout his career, obviously he's had some really good seasons, a career high of 87 points back in 2014. But perennially, he's usually in that 50 to 65 point range. And obviously there has been a clear decline in the point total over the last 3 seasons, going from 78 3 years ago down to 49. But he still shoots the puck a ton. I think he can get upwards over 160 shots. Again, like I said, I would project Jamie Benn for another 45, 50, 55 point season on the high side. Banger League beauty, 70 penalty minutes, 114 hits last season. For me, I would most likely be trying to draft this guy on my team, especially in banger leagues, and somewhere around the 15th or 16th round. I still think he is a draftable player, and he can bring a lot of value in those types of formats. So I like Jamie Benn, a guy who has averaged around 15 and a half minutes over the last 3 seasons, but still puts up some solid points.
This guy is just a gamer, so I totally agree with you in terms of him being an attractive name. With everything that you said holding true for me, I guess I just hold a bit of a different end of draft strategy. If it is a player like a forward that I'm looking at in Jamie Benn, I might go for a younger player with a little bit more upside. But this guy, like you said, is steady as she goes, Steele. So those are just kind of dueling strategies and ways to look at it. But when you're looking at it in the angle that we are today, most definitely still getting a ton of value out of a guy at 36 years old, that just gets it done on and off the ice. So I really like you having this player on your list. I did have him an honorable mention. I almost knew you were going to talk about this player. And like I said before the break, I spoke about Marco Kasper as a second-year player that I really do see stepping up. And you and I are going to talk about sleepers on Friday's episode. I could have almost left him for the sleeper episode as well, because I don't think anyone's
100%.
talking about him. 15 minutes of ice time last year, Steele. This guy had 156 shots. I'm telling you, this is going to be a guy you and I are going to compete for this year, because when I see 156 hits last year, 19 goals, 18 assists, 34 penalty minutes, this guy's developing into a banger league beauty. And then take a look up the middle in Detroit. He's got the second line center spot basically locked up unless he plays very poorly, which I really don't see. Don't forget, not only was he a first-round draft pick at 8th overall, he started playing professional hockey with men in Europe at 17 years old. He had 3 professional years under his belt before even coming to the NHL. This is one of those players that I feel a little bit gutless coming on here and tipping my hand, because I'm telling you, he's going to bring it this year. How about also playing with the Brinkat and Kane? If you don't like that and what I've just said, please pass on him in our drafts. If you're listeners and you're out there and you're going to be joining us, pass on him too in 15 minutes of ice time, which will go up this year. This guy got my attention as a Minuteman, making the most out of his ice time.
And he gets to play with Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat in the top 6. I mean, yeah, you definitely could have left him for some sleeper picks, or even, up-and-comer rookie, a
whole bunch of them
players, a whole bunch of different ways we could have looked at with Marco Kasper. But I like that you bring him up on today's episode, because he's going to be something to watch out for this season as well, playing in that top 6 group. I want to go back out west. I want to talk about Kiefer Sherwood. I know you want to talk about him as well.
Take it away.
Probably the best banger league beauty going into this season, or at least one of them, holds the record of most hits in a National Hockey League season.
Crazy amount of hits
last year. Over 400 plus hits for Kiefer Sherwood last year. And I just like the ability and this opportunity he's gotten now in Vancouver. Obviously traded from Nashville a few seasons ago. He plays a full season or close to full season of 78 games last year. That's, kind of where I want to go with this. Like, maybe take it with a grain of salt, because it is pretty much the first time he has had a full season in the National Hockey League. It is a career year for him. He is 29 years old. 40 points career high for Kiefer Sherwood last year. For as much as he throws his weight around, he actually doesn't get a lot of penalty minutes, only 35 last season, but a career high in shots, a career high in hits, a career high in blocks, a career high in points. It's all career highs for Kiefer Sherwood. I still think this is a guy that can be utilized more in this Vancouver lineup, especially for how I'm looking at them. And I just don't think they have a lot of super talented players outside of Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, obviously. So I think he could get a lot more playing time, which he already did last year. He went from just over 12 minutes with the Nashville Predators up to 14:50 with Vancouver last year. And I think there's room for more deployment on the ice for Kiefer Sherwood to even increase that fantasy value even further.
The Vancouver Canucks are a bit of an enigma of a team. Because, you know, they do have a pretty solid blue line if you're just talking about relative hockey sense. And if Thatcher Demko is healthy, that tandem should be pretty good. However, the forward group has question marks. Like you said, the offensive depth is going to be a concern. And if Thatcher Demko gets hurt and you have to rely on Lankinen again, I just don't see it for this team. So then maybe a guy like Kiefer Sherwood's value takes a hit. And then when you look at also Steele, the rest of that division, and I think that's my main concern, I think we can both agree Anaheim's going to be a lot better. San Jose is probably going to be a lot better. I don't know what to say about Seattle. We'll talk about them in a second. There's not a lot of wiggle room there in the division. So always keep that in mind. It'll be intriguing when you and I break down every single division, 8 through 1. We will do that with our best bets. So make sure you guys stay tapped for that. I like the Kiefer Sherwood. Not going to say anything else because we got a bunch of other players to get to. Will Cooley, shout out to Fern Avenue Public School, 301 hits last year, a good West End Toronto boy steal, 45 points in a stepping out season at 23 years old. I love this guy's motor. It's looking like he might get a shot to crack the top 6. Will it stick? I don't know. But I don't think that matters with this player steal when you saw what he did in 15 minutes of ice time last year. Those 45 points also come along with the 42 hits, 42 penalty minutes and 301 hits. I think I just said to you off air, I expect this Rangers team to bounce back. Maybe that's not exactly a bold take considering the talent that they still have. I like Will Cooley. I'll spit it out now. Once again, a player that I'll be going after because if he was already getting it done in the bottom 6 in 15 minutes of ice time, and I know he was getting looks up top too, this is a guy you better pay attention to with 300 plus hits and bringing 45 plus point value steal in 15 minutes of ice time. Boom, bat, Minutemen that we have our eye on. Make sure you tap in.
Yeah, I mean, this New York Rangers team is set for a bounce back. Shesterkin needs to be a lot better, and we expect him to, which I was just proposed a trade for potentially getting Igor Shesterkin in one of my leagues. But even guys like JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad, I think guys like Breadman as well have been not disrespected, but overlooked going into this draft based on how the team performed overall last year. Okay. So those would be guys, you know, especially in that range of the, 18th to 23rd pick, Artemi Panarin, a guy like that. JT Miller somewhere in the 4th round is where I would have him. I think guys are overlooking him and maybe even a bounce back season from Mika Zibanejad, but a lot of really good options. Will Cooley, one of them. Alexis Lafreniere, hopefully he can again. I feel like I've talked about potential breakout seasons for him the last 5 years, but a lot of good options with the New York Rangers. We got more options for Minutemen after the break. I want to talk about a Vegas Golden Knight player. I want to get your reaction and your take on this one for me, but all of that and more coming up next. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We love using FanDuel because it fits however we want to our bets, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to those Sundays with NFL parlays. So, are you ready to play with FanDuel? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support. Flip over to you, my friend. Who are you looking at next? Who could have some value going into this next year's fantasy draft?
I'll put this one down quickly because I have a feeling he might be on another upcoming episode. Jake Neighbors is a really good name that you want to throw under your cap. When you see triple digits in hits, like we just kind of talked about with Will Cooley, actually, I see more upside even offensively with a player like Jake Neighbors. Jake Neighbors was also a stud in the dub with Edmonton. He was a 26th overall draft pick. St. Louis, similarly, a bit of an enigma team for myself. I know they came on like a house of fire once they brought in Monty, and they are probably more balanced than the Vancouver Canucks, but they might be one of those teams that are on the cutting room floor, outside looking in, that I'm not going to overly invest in too heavily until I see what happens. Jake Neighbors is one of the other names I wanted to throw out there. Under 16 minutes of ice time last year, 46 points, 173 hit steal, and 56 PIMs. Boom, value. To wrap up my side of things, I looked at the Seattle Kraken, and they have a whole bunch of guys that fit this mold. Your boy, Eli Tolvanen. How about Bjorkstrand when he was still there? I believe I know he's now in Tampa Bay. But the way that they deployed everybody was very similar fashion. Right around, they don't have a pure superstar. And how about Shane Wright for a breakout sleeper that we'll talk about? Didn't include him on this list because we'll get there. But Mason Marchment was the name for me. Look, Capo Caco fits the mold. Tolvanen fits the mold. Even Shane Wright, perhaps. Mason Marchment is the guy I look at. Change of scenery this year, Steele, and we alluded to it off the top. Some of these guys' minutes are going up. So if they were getting what they were out of their value in 15 minutes, Mason Marchment might now have a better look out of the, very deep roster in Dallas. 47 points for Mason Marchment last year. He was banged up, but when he was in there, he was hot. He throws his body around. 53 penalty minutes, nearly 100 hits a year. Mason Marchment, for me, really good final pick or two for your team. To me, he's draftable. I don't want to leave him to stream. I'm good to put him on my team thinking that he'll get more of a role in Seattle this year. Love Mason Marchment. Good banger league player. Good balanced player getting it done in minimal ice time last season.
Yeah, another team out west that is in tough because of the division they're playing in and just where the team is at right now. But Mason Marchment could be a good option again in deeper formats.
Thank you.
And speaking about deeper formats, this is about as deep as you can go when we talk about players who still bring value but are getting less than 16, 15 minutes of average ice time. And for me, I've actually gone back to the well with this player quite a few times over the seasons. Again, more of a streaming option than a draftable player, but I'm looking at Brett Howden of the Vegas Golden Knights. So
good one.
When I look at Brett Howden, again, another guy who just had a career year. So maybe you got to take a step back and see what is actually transpiring with the team in Vegas. And, when you look at the line where he's projected, it doesn't look great because he is in the bottom six. He is on that fourth line playing with guys like Colton Sissons and Keegan Kolesar projections for this season.
Probably.
And gets under 15 minutes of average ice time, but he still put up 40 points. Again, a career year for him, but he's 26 years old, just put up a career high 23 goals, 40 points. Great in the plus-minus column with a plus 17, another career high. He can put upwards of somewhere between 120, 140 hits. He just had a career high 25 shots. So a guy who maybe gets a little bit overlooked when it comes to fantasy rankings. Again, under the radar appeal when it comes to rankings, ADP, and just where his value is. It's definitely a deep cut, a deep format type of pick.
Sure.
But when you get into those 16-team leagues, a guy like this comes handy. And again, for me, more of a streaming option I had last year on a week-to-week basis. But I like Brett Howden and what he brought for me when I picked him up.
On a good team, if you're going to take a risk on a guy on minimal ice time and you're trying to choose between one or the other, make sure you're also capitalizing on the quality of team. And you and I are going to have to start breaking down week-to-week schedules. A good fantasy hockey GM knows if you're adding a player, know exactly what you're going up against in terms of the teams on tap. Yeah. You and I will have that covered for you guys. Waiver wire Mondays every single Monday of the season. Steele and I will be here. We will also have mock draft Mondays rolling out all the way until the season starts. We've got some other breakdowns. We are breaking down divisions and best bets. We got a couple of returning special guests. I'm telling you, this is your 30-minute source for fantasy hockey.
It really is. And we got our sleeper episode coming up next on Friday. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, make sure to check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned for next season, of course. From your boys here, Flip and Steele, we wish you good luck with those bets, and we shall see you back here again on Friday.
Peace.